Hello, thanks for coming to my talk. My name is Aaron Lee, and today I'll be sharing with you a few interesting discoveries we made by analyzing cryptocurrency discussion data at large scale in the year 2018 and 19 by using natural language processing. So without further ado, let me first give you a brief introduction of myself. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Qokka. So what Qokka does is we collect public communication data online at large scale. For example, reviews, chats, forum discussions, and so on and so forth. And we analyze them using very efficient and practical machine learning and natural language processing to derive all kinds of insights and make our customers happy. For example, the visualizations you see on the right is actually an interactive output from our system that allows our customers to explore their data and really see what's going on in there. So there are three key components to our system. One is the on-demand scalable public data crawler, which enables us to collect and process terabytes of data every day from places like Reddit, Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter if the data is inside a software or it's a web page or it's behind a CAPTCHA. So we have the technology to penetrate all that. And the second part is a machine learning and natural language processing engine, which we built from scratch. That is really microservices and API driven, which allows us to train thousands of models on the fly and store them very compactly and efficiently and use them even before we finish training them. And the third part of interesting and unique things about our systems are the visualizations and applications we build on top of our own engine. So we don't just build engines or algorithms or backbone systems. We also build very vertical specific solutions. For example, cryptocurrency project, social listening or monitoring solutions, which we did all these experiments upon. And also sentiment analysis UI, sentiment analysis API, and all kinds of interesting web apps, which we launched across 2018 and 19. And many of our visualizations are actually very generic across many applications, which you will see later in the talk. Okay, so without further ado, let's look at some fun experiments. First of all, let me introduce this product we built called Cryptocurrency Community Sentiment. Back in 2019. So this web link doesn't work anymore because we discontinued the public-facing version of the product. But there are four main categories. One is sentiment versus price. Obviously, it's about things like how the Bitcoin price are related to the community sentiment. So second part is market overview, which is a relative comparison of the sentiment across many different projects and cryptocurrencies. So the third feature is news analysis, which is not only about collecting the news which people discussed, but also analyze how people react to the news based on chats and comments. And in the fourth part of the features, we try to summarize people's discussions and analyze the underlying topics and extract the highlights. Our main data sources are Reddit, Telegram, because there are thousands of communities on these platforms for these thousands of cryptocurrency projects. And as I said before, they are a huge amount of data. Okay, so let's look at some results. First part, sentiment versus price. I know a lot of people ask the question of whether the cryptocurrency market is entirely driven by the sentiment, especially how people perceive the value of the cryptocurrencies, rather than any technical indicators, which is not unreasonable because there's no sovereignty, no real assets backing up the value of the cryptocurrencies. So they must be based on people's belief on how much the cryptocurrencies should be valued. So we did some analysis and we found interesting patterns. So here's an example. Here's Ethereum back in 2018 in the month of September, and we found the negative sentiment spike actually caused, probably not caused, but certainly correlated with a downward trend of prices. So on September 4th, the price dropped by over 20%. It was a disaster. But just a few days before that, there was actually a huge spike of negative sentiment, certainly abnormal, an increase of 100% in just one day. And to top it up, there was a considerable drop in positive sentiment by 75% at around the same time. And I'm going to say we are not cherry picking. This kind of phenomenon happened across many cryptocurrencies at many different times. So what you see here is analysis of the week ending in February 18th, 2019 across 9 different popular cryptocurrencies. As indicated by the shapes and directions of the curves between the price and the sentiment, we can see obviously there are some considerable correlations between sentiment and price across different cryptocurrencies. And if we zoom into a particular cryptocurrency, let's say the biggest one, Bitcoin, we can see more examples like this. So on the left, if you look at the lightly shaded orange area, which indicates an upward spike of the sentiment score of Bitcoin, we see that only 2 days afterwards, there is a similarly shaped spike in terms of Bitcoin price. And on the right, first, there comes a subtle drop in terms of Bitcoin sentiment, followed by a drop in terms of Bitcoin price. And a few days later, there's a steep increase of the Bitcoin sentiment, followed by a even more steep spike of Bitcoin price increase just a few days later. However, as you can see on the graph, there are also many spikes in terms of sentiment which didn't come with any spike in terms of price afterwards, which naturally leads to the question, how do we know for sure and by what probabilities? Unfortunately, that's not a question I can answer in full details here because we don't have enough time, but at least I can say that the probability for many cryptocurrencies can be 60%, even higher, which means there are actually some opportunities to follow a strategy based on sentiment here. Well, now I want to move on to the next feature, which I feel a lot more excited about, which is the overall sentiment of the market. So this is based on some Reddit discussion data in the first quarter of 2019. The color indicates the sentiment and the size indicates the discussion volume. But one thing to keep in mind when reading this graph is a small green circle doesn't necessarily mean this project is doing really well, because it could be just nobody is really paying attention to this project, and the only people who are actually talking about something related to this project are the people who have a financial interest in this project. So I find it more informative to focus on those cryptocurrencies which has a reasonably large circle but are much less bad in terms of sentiment compared to many other projects. A good example is BAT here. So for those people who didn't know, BAT is actually Basic Attention Token, which is a cryptocurrency project coupled with a browser called Brave, which I believe in 2019 already had millions of users. And the users really like this browser because it's privacy-centric, it is faster than Chrome and faster than many other browsers, so the user experience was good. So a positive indicator here actually means that people are relatively happier with BAT than many other cryptocurrencies. And if you look at BAT's performance during the time when the crypto market crashed in 2019, we would say that BAT is probably one of the least impacted cryptocurrency because it had real products that worked. So one interesting thing I noticed by reading the graph right now compared to a year ago is the overhyped projects that are too green in the graph actually didn't do well. And those with polarized opinions in their communities only subtly leaning towards positive or negative actually did a lot better. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is news analysis. Sometimes it's really hard to tell whether a piece of content is actually sponsored content and in the end it's probably not that interesting, or it is actually something that's really newsworthy and really influences a lot of people. So the method we are using here is by analyzing what kind of news and events people actually talk about and how they comment on it. And when we are analyzing the comments, we actually found something interesting. A news with positive titles doesn't actually mean that people are going to perceive it positively. To give you a few examples, here someone on Twitter posted Google searches for Bitcoin picking up. On the surface, looks like a very positive thing until you look at the comments on Reddit. Well, the number one comment that people voted for is I guess people are searching Bitcoin dead. And to give you some context, this is when Bitcoin price dropped from 20,000 down to just a few thousand, and people are generally not happy about it. So what this analysis is telling me is how people react to news and how people react with respect to particular topics are probably a more effective indicator than the news titles themselves and the sentiment of the news themselves. And here's another example. So this is when the news broke out that Switzerland approved the first ever cryptocurrency ETF, and people always thought cryptocurrency ETF will make a big impact on cryptocurrency because that's going to bring cryptocurrency into the mainstream financial market. But even though a lot of people were excited about this initially, very soon people figured out it's just fake news because they didn't really approve an ETF, they approved ETP. So as a result, the overall sentiment is neutral towards negative range. And a few days later, Bitcoin price crashed again by over 33%. What a surprise. Now think about it. If we build a trading bot solely based on the sentiment of the news titles, that would be disastrous. But here we correctly predicted the true sentiment because we look at how people react to this news. Okay, so the last feature I want to talk about today is topics, opinions, and highlights. So a question that a lot of people have in mind is whether these cryptocurrency projects are actually doing something useful. So those people who are talking about cryptocurrency all day in those communities, are they talking about the merits of this project? Are they actually talking about the technical aspect and applications, use cases of these projects? Or are they just talking about pump and dump and arbitrage opportunity and speculations? And we built this feature exactly to find out what's really going on, what people really talk about. And the results are quite interesting. So if you look at the topics under Ethereum, which is on the top left, you'll see that people actually talk about contract, talk about system, talk about different ideas, and the chain. And if you compare it with Dogecoin, which is basically a parody to Bitcoin based on a meme, you will see the underlying topics are all about the financial stuff and the name of the dog, which is Sheep. So overall, the differences in terms of trading topics for all these projects are pretty indicative of the differences between these projects. And if we go into a particular example, let's say Ethereum, so even this was in the first quarter of 2019 when Ethereum was in a bear market, people in the community still talk about technology, still talk about use cases as indicated by these topics we analyzed in real time. And I think that means something. At least it's telling me that people are working hard in this project and this is not a scam. And I just want to show something here. Our system actually has the ability to zoom into a particular topic in more details and show people's opinions, a summarized version of people's opinion. Here we are still looking at the Ethereum community, but we are zooming into the particular topic of system. For the week ending in February 20th, 2019, we are summarizing the top issues and summarizing the most representative opinion with respect to the top issues in the topic system. So the purpose of all this is instead of going into the forum and read all the stuff yourself, we can have a quick and balanced understanding of the top ongoing issues inside this community or inside this project with respect to different topics. So this can really save you a lot of time and help you cure your Reddit addiction. Well, as a final slide, I just want to finish by introducing a little bit of something else that we do. Well, here are a couple of different solutions we built for different verticals, some of which we also launched our own product in, for example, e-commerce and fintech. So if you have questions for us or if you are interested in working with us, please just send us an email at hello@Qokka.ai and I will definitely reply. Or you can just add me on LinkedIn using the QR code on the right. If you couldn't scan a QR code, you can just search Aaron Lee Qokka on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find and we can just chat from there. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.